Okay, so I'm looking now at Oliver's next list of titles, highlights under TGAs. I'm not sure that applies here, though, because I'm not actually seeing too much in the way of gameplay. Bit of a repeat theme there. Where should we begin? Star Wars, Fate of the Old Republic. Now, obviously, there was some, the fact of its existence is great news. Talking about the game director behind it, also great news. Didn't actually see the game, though, as far as I can tell.
No, and this is a case where we have a brand new developer, which makes it all the more galling. They were founded in July of this year. So July of this year, it's December now. That's like 5 months, 4 months. I mean, that's a crazy span of time. Obviously, they've had no time to produce any kind of game assets here and get everything into decent shape. This game's probably not going to get released anytime soon, maybe not even this decade.
Really?
Not even this decade.
I think so. That's a very
2029 would be the earliest date that I could even conceive of in my head for this game, but I'd think much more likely 2030 or 2031. I mean, this is like a really distant reveal. It reminds me of the Blade reveal from I think a couple of years ago, which is also pitched as like brand new studio. Hey, we're hiring. Like that was part of the pitch there. And yeah, this studio, Archanaut Studios, it seems to be a lot of ex-BioWare devs. Obviously, you have Casey Hudson in the mix, but also they're based in Edmonton, which is very suspicious. Edmonton obviously being the home of BioWare. They also have a branch studio in Kelowna, BC, which is of some importance to me because that's actually where I grew up. And it's not a large city or anything, and I wasn't aware of any game developers who were based in Kelowna. Very, very beautiful place, Lake Country, BC, nice, beautiful lake. I've quite enjoyed living there over the years. But enough about me. But that's certainly an area of interest to me. Now, in terms of this more specific details here, there really aren't any. They've said PC and consoles, but not specified what kind of PCs or what kind of consoles. And they've said basically it's not KOTOR 3 necessarily, and it's the Old Republic 3. But it's in that kind of lineage of those games. I'd be curious to see how many gameplay elements they bring over, if they would maybe adopt, kind of a Final Fantasy VII Remake style combat system with a bit of pausing, or what they would do with that, if they would do any kind of like a semblance of a turn-based system at all, any kind of like real-time combat that's based explicitly on timers. I'm not sure, probably not likely. Beyond that, what do you say? It's clearly a trailer that's not representative of anything beyond like moods and themes. It's clearly an offline render. It's like from the moment you see like those raindrops and all this stuff, it's like clearly not running in real time too much anything. So it's kind of a waste of an introduction because the game has been introduced, but all I really feel like I have is the title and the studio.
Yeah, I got so much of that. It hits me so hard. I'm reminded of that, that George Lucas quote, like, "Oh, they're already building the sets. I got to get writing on this script." Like it's that exact same feeling. You're like, I don't even think they have an idea of what's going on here, for how far along it is. But we do know some. Okay, confirmed lightsabers. Confirmed. Star Wars, we don't have that much going on here. I guess I'm a little happy that this means that Lucasfilm is content with the old extended universe existence.
Oh, that's true.
I was just thinking about that now. I mean, some of the EU had some really bad crap in it, I would say, but the Old Republic was at least interesting. Being so, far away in time, although this universe has had no apparently technological development in all this time, which always interests me. But yeah, there's almost the only thing I can really say here is that it's a CG trailer, and it means a game might come out at one point in time.
Yeah, that's a very astute observation there, Alex. Thank you. I just think, going back to the sort of movie theme, if this was an announcement in the movie space, they wouldn't be, just coming up with computer-generated footage of what they think the movie might look like. They would possibly, crazy thought, they might have actually had the creative on stage, maybe with some concept art in the background, talking about the game and getting excitement that way. But apparently that's not good enough. Not great. Oliver, next game you want to talk about here. Should we talk about Exodus?
Yeah, let's talk about Exodus. Exodus is kind of a mixed reveal. I would say mixed in the sense that it is largely cinematic. There's maybe one or two small hints of gameplay in this trailer, but the key difference for me is that this is actually appears to be in-engine, appears to be real-time, has some frame rate drops, is clearly UE5, and they've also confirmed UE5 separately, although anyone with eyes can see that it's UE5. It's very easily guessable at this point, because we've seen so many titles with UE5, and anyways, throw a stone and you're bound to hit a developer working on a UE5 game at this point. I mean, it's ridiculous. But anyways, this is another ex-BioWare game. They talk about, ex-BioWare staff, things like this being on the team. Looks great. It's very Mass Effect. The premise is similar to those Mass Effect games. You have aliens, alien humanoids, you have humans. It's a cover shooter, they say, with special abilities, although they've thrown in some stealth mechanics and things like that in the mix. So it seems very familiar, I think, for people who are into Mass Effect, but I quite like the Mass Effect games, at least the pre-Andromeda Mass Effect games back in the day. And I'm kind of into this. They say early 2027. It looks very realistic, looks very achievable, but also looks really good. So I'm not too down in this trailer, even though it is mostly non-gameplay footage.
Okay. Yeah. Alex?
Yeah. So here, there's a couple things that I do really like. Is like, I do think this is all showing stuff that will be in the game and is actually rendering in real time, primarily on something. There's like one shot where I think it might have been from like a cinematic that they did render offline, just because of one aspect of it. I'm like, I don't know about the way that looks, but the rest of it though looks very realistic to me. I do like Mass Effect 1. I hope this leans more into that. There's one aspect of the trailer that did scare me that it won't, is that there's like some sort of Destiny storyline, like, you child of the netherworld, you must take up the destiny. Yeah. And I'm like, oh no, another messianic story. I'm like, so I get a little bit worried about that, because it's very tropey, and I thought that's something that the first Mass Effect didn't have a lot of, unlike the sequels. And I'm a little bit worried about that. One thing that I want to talk about is the use of metahuman, very obviously. So metahuman produces great results for background characters, I would say, in most games. People you don't really walk up to and spend a whole lot of time with, but I would say the limits in the shading that are on them are slightly visible here, even on like the main character, or even the side characters. And they're obviously not going for 100% realistic character proportions in their face, and that's perfectly appropriate. It's fine. I don't want to. They do have a little bit of that kind of shovelware look of their facial proportions, only in their facial proportions. There's a way to do facial proportions, and they chose the one that is very common. That's fine. That's their choice. But the eyes specifically, they are very white, as in they're like lacking kind of like transmission, as well as the eyelids themselves should be shadow casting onto the eyeball. And in a lot of scenes, the eyes, to me, look a little too pristine white. And it's giving everyone a kind of glowy-eyed look. That may be their design. But I also think that is something you see pretty commonly in metahuman characters in games. And you just kind of see it all over the trailer. And I think that's one of the things that's getting a lot of people, beyond the proportions being that negative word I said earlier, like they're using that very specific proportions of the face, but the eyes are kind of distracting. I think the rest, though, visually is utterly fantastic. So I'm actually very happy with the rest of the visual package here.
Okay, good stuff. We're going to round out this mini section by talking about Divinity, which was a big reveal by Larian. Obviously, massive excitement there. Unfortunately, once again, we didn't actually get to see anything about the game. People on wires, though, if you're into that, plenty to get you excited. Oliver, why did this make the list?
This is one of the more egregious ones, if only because, I know the pedigree of Larry, and I don't think the final game is going to look anything like this. I gotta say, this is just very aspirational, very offline CG. It does not look like anything that could ship in a game. Definitely does not look like anything that I suspect Larian will ship in a game. It's described explicitly as a cinematic reveal. It's basically a Divinity Original Sin 3, but kind of soft rebooted in that kind of way that developers do, I think, when they want to achieve larger audiences. Obviously, that's evident in the name, and I think it's also going to break certain plot connections with prior games, or at least direct plot connections. I'm sure there'll be references and characters and things like that, but not a direct continuation. But this is no platforms have been announced for this game whatsoever. Not at all. Not PC, not console, not anything. No engine has been announced for this game, and no release date has been announced for this game. So it's a total non-announcement. As far as these announcements go, it announces the least that you can announce, basically. So that gets a bit of a ding for me, as with Star Wars. This is another CG special.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, let's move on to some games where we can actually pass some comment. Oliver, you wanted to talk about Ontos from Fictional.
I did. So this is interesting. It's actually using a proprietary game engine called HPL4, which is cool. They described that in an interview. I don't know any particular details about HPL4, but it seems very interesting. They're choosing to go with a proprietary game engine, especially when you'd think a game of this size and scope potentially would be really well suited for Unreal potentially. It's interesting to see them going in a different direction. They describe it as an exploration game, a scavenging game. It has those elements. It's a tension-packed game, but they say it's not as horror-focused, it seems, as some of their prior titles, which include Amnesia, the Amnesia series, and Soma, which was quite good as well. So I'm definitely into this. New technology, looks interesting. It's got Stellan Skarsgård in there voicing some kind of important character in the game, maybe some kind of antagonist. So I'm pretty into it at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely looks different to a lot of the other Unreal Engine stuff we saw. Also, stylized characters, which
better stylized though.
Yeah,
better than the last trailer of Exodus that we talked about. I did get a big chuckle at the beginning with like all the rats acting as like a computer voice modulator for someone or something like that, and they're like, "I can explain," or something like the voiceover. It's like that's so ridiculous.
And moving on swiftly, let's talk about Star Wars Galactic Racer. This looked quite interesting, didn't it? Pod racing is back, but this time set in the sequel trilogy era, based on the setting.
Yeah, well, I would clarify this is not pod racers actually, but this is speeders. This is speeders, not pod racers. But yeah, obviously there's that classic Star Wars pod racing game. But I'm into this because it looks like a reasonably big budget racing game, which we see very few of. I'm sure it will have arcadey handling characteristics. There are a couple of details in here that I'm not necessarily as big of a fan of, like there's an emphasis on vehicle customization and builds and branching routes. But they do talk about vehicle contact being a key emphasis. So it could be like a burnout racers. Yeah, road rash. Yeah. So I'm into this.
Mm-hmm. Alex?
I do see it's an Unreal title. It's actually mixed in the last card, but they also have GeForce RTX and Intel already down there, which is very interesting. Usually you don't see hardware sponsors in the first initial announcement trailer, unless it is from like one of the like GTC shows or like some sort of like CES show where they want to show off some hardware for the first time. So that's interesting, and that I hope that bodes well for the game on PC. Who knows though? I do like the fact that it is, that lived-in hardware design that you see in a lot of these games. I am also less keen on the customization aspects, but I am keen on an arcade-style racer. Mm-hmm. So those are all things that sound really great to me. The production value was ridiculous in this trailer. It did look incredible, but how much of that will carry over to the final game is hard to know. But it did look much more, based on a lot of the aliasing in the shots, it did look like it was actually something that was running on something. There's no reason. There's no reason to include aliasing in something unless you really want to. It's something that was running. So that's positive for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Cinematic cameras, though, Alex.
Yeah, I know. I mean,
I'm just winding you up.
I know. There are some aspects. I mean, a replay camera could do some of these things. That's really. I really do wish they did show some gameplay. It would probably look just as incredible. Just they could have shown that, but they didn't. Whatever.
Yeah. It's just a lot of the things you say, Alex. I'm just thinking about the audience reaction. I could just imagine somebody saying, "What's Alex got against messiahs?"
Yeah. What is this anti-messiah complex that Alex says?
Yes. Should we move on to No Law? Sorry, Oliver.
No Law. Well, this is a game I'm interested in part because of the reveal trailer, which looks very cool, very cyberpunk. It's a first-person shooter. They're showing off some significant, although very quickly cut segments of gameplay, which I do appreciate. And it is first-person gameplay that's not using a cinematic camera, so Alex should be reasonably happy with that development. But the other reason why I'm interested in this game is that it's being developed by the developer Neon Giant, who produced The Ascent, which I thought was a sublime little shooter. This obviously takes place in a different perspective. It looks great. There are, I mean, I don't need to say this again, but it's Unreal Engine 5. That's obvious from the very first frame of this trailer. I've not even looked up if they've commented on it because I don't need to.
Obviously, the developers of The Ascent, in terms of how they worked with Unreal Engine 4, it's pretty legendary stuff, Alex, when we go into the weeds there. But this does look pretty, really good, right?
Yeah, it looks really good. Their attention to asset detail will probably put them right up there. They're very good with that stuff. I think that's one of the key things that I really loved about their last game. I saw this game technically 2 years ago now at Gamescom before it had a name. Back then it was described as more, Deus Ex-like. So it is a first-person shooter, but they also show, oh, look, he's attacking them from above and they don't know that he's there, So that is, I think stealth will actually be a huge part of it. As from what I understand, it is going to be more larger, have you played Deus Ex? Like it's like a small hub world area. That's what it's going to be. Key takeaways from the trailer: UE5, most definitely. I already knew that, but they are using hardware lumen here. You can see that based upon some of the camera angle stuff, like SSR just wouldn't show some stuff that it does show in the reflections very nicely. So all that stuff looks great. I'm very curious to see. The performance was very iffy throughout the whole trailer, but from what I understand, the game has a whole ton of AI in it that is persistent. So getting games like that with actually, larger AI routines in an area that you can freely explore all the time, that is probably going to be a CPU killer. So 30 FPS, 60 FPS on current gen consoles. 60 FPS would be incredible based upon what I'd seen right here. So we'll have to just see how the final product looks.
Lighting, Alex, sublime.
Yeah, very, very well done here. I think I think overcast days are one thing UE does really well. But also they do show off at different times of day here. That I remember when Cyberpunk was first revealed, they're like, they showed Night City off in daytime. How dare they? It's called Night City. I'm fine with that. I think it's really great to see a day-night cycle, and especially if it's actually incorporated into the immersive sim-like gameplay here, where like there's different stuff happening at different times of day. So
yeah, it's quite funny that this sort of overcast daytime setting is basically the basis for a whole bunch of these ultra realistic mods that come out for the likes of Cyberpunk.
Yeah, it is true. It's one of the easier things you can do. Getting sunlight to look right on a lot of materials is actually very hard. So
that was another thing which sort of, if you go back to the Ride 4 game that had this sort of 15 minutes of fame.
Yeah.
Exactly the same reason. Yeah, maybe you should do sort of like a supercut of realistic, quote unquote realistic games and mods at some point, because you'll see it straight away how it works. It's quite interesting. Oliver, let's talk Pragmata, which we saw at Gamescom. We saw much more of it here, and we got a Switch 2 announced, which is pretty cool, right?
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to touch on a couple of games here at the end, but Pragmata I thought was worth mentioning. This wasn't actually part of the main show, I don't think. I think it was part of the pre-show, but they showed off a new trailer for the game. They have a new gameplay demo that is out now on PC. They announced a date, which is April 24th, 2026, and the Switch 2 release, which is very cool. So I think it's nice that Capcom is continuing to support Switch 2. I'll be curious to see what, if any, ray tracing features make the grade there, if some version of their RTGI would presumably make the cut, if some kind of RT reflection solution would make the cut, perhaps not. But I'm very into Capcom and their support of Switch 2. I think it's very cool.
Yeah, I was talking to you earlier, Alex. Sorry, I was talking to you earlier, Alex, about the fact that the downloadable demo is the Gamescom demo, and you just said, "Oh, I didn't get to play it at Gamescom." But basically, the gameplay demo is in a very enclosed sort of environment, and what we're actually seeing in the trailer here is much more sort of wide ranging than that. So yeah, it's pretty cool, I think.
Yeah, looking at the website. By the website, I mean Nintendo.com. They have a announcement of the game, and you can look at the product page for it. And they do have screenshots.
Okay.
And that they are interesting. They appear to be 1080p screenshots, but they have a lot of the hallmarks that we saw from the Switch 2 Resident Evil Requiem trailer, if you recall that.
Yeah.
And here it actually, I don't want to call it, but it does look like DLSS-like, the image, which is very interesting that you can already kind of see that. It looks like a DLSS upscale of 1080p. And you can see it specifically in the hair here that they are using the hair cards that the engine apparently, I do wonder how they do it, because if you art up a game to use hair cards versus strand hair, it's laborious to really make sure that it looks fine and normal enough in most scenes of the game, and also you're making two separate assets that are going to be lit and shaded and move differently from one another. So it is very interesting, but that is what it appears to be. But based upon what we saw with Street Fighter, I think this will probably run pretty darn well at a nice 30 FPS is what I'd presume of it. But like Oliver, I am curious to see when and if we'll ever see other games other than Star Wars Outlaws running with ray tracing on the Switch, because that has yet to be seen.
Okay. A couple of final games I want to talk about. AudioMech, Oliver.
This is from the developers of AudioSurf, and it has a similar kind of core concept here, but instead of being this kind of beat matching rhythm game, it is a twin stick shooter, which I think is cool. So basically you supply your own music through your own library. I'm not sure how that would integrate, if at all, with the rise in streaming services, because obviously people don't frequently have DRM-free downloads of music anymore on their computers. They have a Spotify account. But in any case, I think this is pretty cool. I'm always into these games that integrate your music in some kind of sense into the game. Recently, I've really enjoyed that with GTA 5 and loading up my custom soundtrack into the game. They call it self-radio and getting that music playback in game. I think it's really cool. So this is just something that I'm into. I don't know if anyone else is really into this, but I could see myself playing this with my music library.
Well, the recent release of Sectori has reminded me that twin stick shooters are actually really, really cool and fun to play.
Yeah,
looks cool.
Sure.
Alex?
I agree. I mean, I don't play a lot of audio-based games for a while now, but if there was one I would probably want to try out, it'd be one where I load up my own music into it. So this would be it.
Okay. Just trying to imagine what your music would be and the impact on gameplay. Final game we quickly want to discuss was Tank Rat, which I thought looked really, really cool.
Yeah. Rich, you pointed this out, and it missed my attention in the initial roundup of games here. But it looks like a pretty fast action game, open world action game. Does not look like anything too crazy in terms of its graphics, but it looks fun, and I kind of miss just like having a fun action game, and it seems like something that's a little bit absent from the Game Awards with its emphasis on cinematic experiences, story experiences, big AAA games. Just give me something fun, enjoyable, and breezy like this. I think it's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my exact opinion. I mean, those games do come out all the time on Steam, which is why I'm happy that they do exist. But I want to see them be a bigger part of the discussion in things like this, because they make up a huge bulk of the industry. And it seems like with all these large AAA games being announced before they've even started development, that I'd like to see something that actually showed off gameplay. So bravo.
Bravo, absolutely, yeah. I think that's kind of everything we got to say about the Game Awards for this year. I didn't actually catch the awards themselves. That's one of the weird things about covering it on DF Direct, is that the kind of ceremony finishes up and then it's scant hours later when we actually wake up and then record the show. So, haven't got too much to say about that. You did catch a bit of the ceremony, the first hour, right, Oliver?
Yes, I knew I had to be up for this recording, so
Right.
I watched the first hour of it before I decided that's enough, and I went to sleep, which perhaps does not speak too much to the stimulating aspects of Jeff's performance there. But I thought what I saw was reasonable. I tend to tune out the awards a little bit and just focus on the announcements because that's really what I'm there for. And I think we saw a reasonable mix of new games, some surprises, maybe not enough surprises. The area where I'd really ding them is I think the quality of the trailers was not high enough. I think the quality of the games is probably high enough. The quantity of the games certainly was more than high enough, but just the quality of that trailer presentation wasn't high enough. And I noted also that Microsoft announced, I think in the early portion of the Game Awards stream, there was some announcement. I don't know if it occurred in the Game Awards stream or alongside it in some form, but they're doing a developer direct next year, which I think is the correct format for showcasing a variety of games. And they also confirmed, perhaps to no one's surprise, that Playground Games will be a part of that presentation. So that's what I'm really looking forward to in the new year.